have a lot on our plate. Today is Friday, August the 23rd. So let's get the show started. This is Business Morning with me, Bosin Omofaye. Let's start with the big stories around the state of the country's economy. The first National Economic Council meeting was held yesterday after the cabinet inauguration. The NSE discussed the medium-term economic framework, what you call the MTEF 2020-2022, as well as the fiscal strategy paper. That presentation made by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed. The committee or the council also discussed a number of other issues relating to revenue generation, the update on the ERGP, that's the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, what's the balance in the stabilization account, and Budget 2020, among others. It was a full briefing of governors and others by the head of the Finance Ministry. Meantime, state governments were shocked yesterday as the Finance, Budget and National Planning Minister says the federal government wants its money back. How much is that? 614 billion naira, which the federal government arranged through the central bank as budget support loan facility for 35 state governments. The money was shared at 17.5 billion naira to 35 states government, and now the money is being recalled by the Nigerian government. So how will this money be repaid? Of course, we understand, as usual, that the state governors protested that the government wants this refund, but the minister says the Ministry of Finance, the Governors Forum, and the Central Bank will work out the modalities for the commencement of the bailout repayment. Meantime, the Labour Minister, Chris Ngige, says 60% of Nigeria's budget for 2019 will be rolled into 2020 budget due to the sluggish implementation of the current fiscal year appropriations. The minister says the 2019 budget has not been aggressively executed, adding that the budget 2020 will be submitted to the National Assembly in September. He also warned the agencies under the Ministry of Labour not to collude with the National Assembly or legislators to pad the budget figures. And this is one bad news coming through, of course, all over the media, including social media. Nigerians dominate the list of indictments issued on Thursday by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, against some 80 individuals accused of nearly $3 billion internet fraud in the U.S., targeting companies and individuals since 2015. According to the FBI, this indictment sends a message that we will identify perpetrators no matter where they reside, and we will cut off the flow of illegal, ill-gotten gains. End of quote. Good news on the flip side. 2 days rally at the stock market added 255 billion naira to equities value on Thursday as Customs Street digests President Buhari's new cabinet inauguration. That's the stock market. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But let's raise the curtain on today's market by looking at the money market fund. Today, First Early money market fund debut on FMDQ. So let's have a few minutes chat to this with Felix Johnson, who is the Managing Director of First Early Asset Management, is live to us from FMDQ Exchange Place. Mr. Johnson, good morning. Good to have you on the program.
Good morning, Mr. Bosin.
Thank you. First, let's chat to you about the, when we talk about money market managed funds, or what do you have in mind? Why is this such a rave at the moment?
Well, I don't think it's a rave. It just reflects the structure of the economy. When you look at the Nigerian economy, you look at the economic indices, the per capita income, which is less than 2,000, and you look at the population that we're talking of close to 200 million. At $1,900, what you typically see is people are on average of about $720,000 a month. And with that, people can't really take risk. They would rather be, I mean, even if they want to take risk, the ability to take risk because of the capital involved, they won't be able to take it. It's just a similar thing which you see across other economies which are similar to the Nigerian economy. So I won't say it's a rave. It's just the structure of the economy that encourages the floating of money market funds.
Yes, but things are changing. Look at the landscape today of the marketplace, money marketplace, as it were. What do you see here as new funds like First Rallies coming to the market, and you're looking at exchange rate issues, you're looking at the debt market, you're looking at currency. Give us a sense here of what investors should expect moving forward.
Well, given, like I said, given the structure of the economy, you have the institutionals, you have the retail, and you have the HNIs. The HNIs will typically like to hedge, so you see quite a number of people going from money markets into foreign US-based investment. But on the retail end, at 720,000 per annum average income, I don't really see a solution. I mean, the minimum you see these days is an investment of about $2,500 on any USD investment. And if someone is on 720,000 annually, that will come to about 60,000. I mean, if you convert that to dollars, that's less than $200.
Okay, so in terms of the new fund, we're looking at 1.157 or so a billion naira. Is this
Yes.
big enough for the appetite of the market, as you just described it, looking at the structure of the economy?
Well, I mean, I just think it's a drop. I mean, when you even look at AUM per capita, AUM compared to GDP, we are one of the lowest in the African continent. And on the basis of that, I still think the market still needs more money market funds and mutual funds generally.
So what's the expectations here in terms of costs of managing the funds? What returns expectations am I going to tell investors here and all of that?
Well, because it's, I mean, typically, I mean, if you're going to offer those kind of services on an individual level, it's not going to be economical. So, but because we are pulling funds together, it actually makes sense for, I mean, to actually put money in them and you get access to professional money management. So basically, I mean, at 2-3 million, I mean, it's just not worth it having access on a portfolio basis to professional management. So it's always better on the pooled fund basis, which is the mutual fund.
So why is the value addition here for me?
Well, the value addition is very simple. I mean, when you compare the rates on the savings, even fixed deposit, if you don't have 1 million, you're not, most banks will not sign you on. And even if they sign you on, the rates you get will be middle, low single digits. Unlike most of the money market funds these days, they are double digits and they are tax-free.
Okay. So why are you folks listing on FMDQ? Why do you choose the FMDQ to list a mutual fund?
Well, FMDQ, when it comes to fixed income products, they are market leader. And given that it's a money market fund, we've actually seen the track record across the fixed income securities. So we think for this particular product, FMDQ is actually the best place to list the fund.
Okay. We wish you folks the best.
Thank you very much.
Corporate marriage between FMDQ and First Rallies Asset Management.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and have
You're welcome.
the best of the day. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Felix Johnson, Managing Director at First Rallies Asset Management. Temple Ashaju, our business correspondent at the stock exchanges, coming up next on the show. Yesterday, we added 1.01% to the all-share index. On Wednesday, it was 1.1%, thanks to the consumer goods on Wednesday and the banks to the market by storm, 2.54% on Thursday. So, Temple Ashaju, getting here into this conversation, it looks like this rally is being tied to the announcement that finally we have a cabinet in place. What the quality of the cabinet is and all that is a different kettle of fish altogether, but we have a marketplace. Now the market can heave a sigh of relief.
Right, boss. I mean, Investors are buying now with hopes that these cabinets will swing into action and start performing immediately, churning out some comments that will help them to actually reinstate their confidence in the Nigerian market. Uh, so that's basically what we're seeing. However, this is really, really fragile. The level of confidence we're seeing on the part of investors in this economy right now is really, really fragile. If you look critically, what we understand is that a lot of investors that are taking position now are domestic investors. We haven't really seen the real re-entry of the offshore folks until we really see some concrete, position or comments or some kind of decision or policy direction from these cabinet members before the FPIs are likely to resume in the market. And by then, it would have turned to some huge gains or profit for the smart investors, domestic folks that have now keyed into the market between, 2 days ago, yesterday, and now that we've been seeing this level of interest that is really firm on the likes of MTN, on the likes of Dangote Cement, which has dropped to some 166, 165 naira per share, and of course Nestle, which is a very huge one when it comes to the food sector, subsector of the Nigerian capital market or the stock market. But basically, we added 134 billion naira yesterday to the equity capitalization of the exchange, thanks to MTN, Dangote, and Nestle. We got a couple of stocks that went on offer yesterday. A lot of stocks that had actually hit the floors are now back up to at least to some level, even though we know that activity level yesterday was quite negative. Volume of transactions was down by more than 25%. Value of transaction also declined by some 0.40%. That's quite marginal though. But you got 22 gainers against 13 losers yesterday in the market. And all of these put together has now put the week-to-date performance of the market in a positive position, even though we know that month-to-date and year-to-date are still quite negative. Going by the sectoral analysis, we got EcoBank Transnational Incorporated up yesterday by more than 9%. This is a bank that has actually fallen close to 5 naira before now. It's usually not in this region of price. It's usually around 10, 13 to 17 naira, sometimes at 20 naira. That looks like it's peak in years. And that's why investors are quickly taking advantage of the low price they've got up there. Consumer goods, Nestle, as I said earlier, was up. You got Dangote Cement up by 60 basis points yesterday, supporting all of the industrial goods sector. Insurance, we're seeing that also moving up. Wapik was up yesterday, erasing the losses that it had the previous day. Oil and gas side of the market, you got a couple of stocks there, not really performing well, even though we know that yesterday Eternal Oil went on bid, just like we saw ETI going on bid yesterday. But Forte Oil did a bit of appreciation. We got MRS that was down yesterday. O&O was also down. If you look at the unlisted securities side of the market, it was unchanged. In fact, that looks like the lowest that platform has actually done this year. If you look at the value of transaction, was just 28,000 naira plus. That's really, really low, asking investors to come take some position, actually. For the fixed income side of the market, both sides, both the bonds and the treasury bill side of the market were really, really bearish yesterday. We know that liquidity level was really, really on the high side though. We know that trading at the bond side of the market saw some 44 basis points advancement in average yield, and of course yield on benchmark bonds actually rose by some 3 basis points. For treasury bills, it was really, really negative as well, Bosun.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tempo. Let's check in with you later on the show and see if Buhari's cabinet rally is still holding up the stock market as we start the final trading day of the week. If things go as we started on Wednesday, most likely we'll finish the week on the green side of the table. Thank you so much, Temple Ashaju, our business correspondent from our studios at the Stock Exchange. So let's put a bit of the big political, economic, and market story together and get some of the CEOs' reactions to that in our CEOs, markets, squawk. Let's talk to Johnson Chukwu, who is the CEO at Career Asset Management. He's scapping into this show today from the city of London. Thank you so much, Mr. Chukwu. It's good to have you on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great. I'm sure you spent a few days in London watching the story and the news around from here, the big cabinet story and the market rally for 2 days back to back. Would you hang these 2-day market gains on the neck of the Buhari's new cabinet inauguration?
Interestingly, as it stands today, there's no other justification, there's no other reason anybody can impute to the two-day market rally other than the inauguration of the cabinet. We saw some of the highest rallies we've seen in the recent past, the past 2 days. I mean, 2 days we saw a market rally of 200 basis points. And we've not seen that for a very long time. So it can only be ascribed to the fact that the market has a sense of some relief that the cabinet has now been inaugurated.
Okay, so what's your take, therefore, on this cabinet moving forward? Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. We now have a cabinet in place, but you look at the unbundling and the restructuring of the cabinet and the ministries. What's your take as a CEO on Market Street?
Well, there are two major adjustments in the cabinet structure that was reported by the assignments of the ministers. One is the Ministry of Finance, where you now have the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of National Budget and Planning combined into a single ministry. It used to be like that in the past. So it has now been fused again into a single ministry. And then you have the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing that has now been broken into two to now have Ministry of Works and Housing and Ministry of Power. So those are two critical adjustments we saw in the formation of the new cabinet. Let's start from the Ministry of Finance and National Planning. Clearly, you know, the National Planning Ministry was the one preparing the medium-term expenditure framework. So that means that the Ministry of Finance will not only prepare the budget, will also prepare the medium-term expenditure framework. Both budget and medium-term expenditure framework used to be the work of the Ministry of National Planning. Then it also means that the Ministry of Finance will also not just prepare these major directional policy documents, they will also have to implement those policies. So I think that fusion, for me, is a form of harmonization. I really think having the Ministry of National Planning and Budget, when we really don't have a long-term planning arrangement, we only have short-term plans, was a duplication. So I don't have a problem with that. I think it will work well. But now the challenge will be the heavy lifting aspect. What the minister is going to do, what will be her priorities as it relates to that ministry. Then on the Ministry of Power and Works and Housing, I mean, a lot of us agitated that that ministry should be broken up into 2 or 3. We know that one of the critical challenges we have in the country is the issue of power. And we felt that combining it with another critical ministry, Ministry of Works, was an overkill. And that it was difficult for any single person to effectively man those two critical arms of government and deliver effectively. So it's also a relief that that has also been broken up.
So let's spend the next 1 or 2 minutes to check in with the Capital Markets Committee. What's your take on the state of the market right now? What key issues do you think the CMC, which was held yesterday, should take on board moving forward?
I think the key thing is how to bring back investment to the market, how to restore investors' confidence on a medium to long-term basis. We saw situations where, because of the macroeconomic environment, because of political issues, investors, both local and foreign investors, stayed away from the market, and which was why we saw a market decline of about 14% before we saw the 2-day rally. The key thing is, how do we, because the challenge we have in the capital market is not the capital market per se. It has to do with the macroeconomic environment, the political environment. Is how to get the government to support some of these policies that will encourage investors back to the market. One of which is the issue of extension of the tax holidays that was granted to capital market transactions. I know the market operators and our regulators have been pushing for the extension of that tax holiday, and I'm hoping that now that we have Minister of Finance, that it will be granted so that we further reduce the cost of transactions in the market.
Johnson Chukwu, the CEO at Takari Asset Management, thank you so much. Enjoy your holiday and see you back at home pretty soon.
My pleasure.
Johnson Chukwu, CEO at Takari Asset Management. Just before we take a break, the Nigerian Stock Exchange rolled out a few notifications to the market community, and one of these has to do with the rules on the release calendar for regulatory announcement and filings of listed companies. Simply put, the stock exchange has been working with the SEC and the market to ensure that we have a calendar for earnings releases as you have in other jurisdictions, in other developed markets. Now, that rule was approved by the SEC on the 6th of May this year, and the deadline to start the implementation was the 2nd of September, which is just about a week from now. Now, the Nigerian Stock Exchange says the announced effective date of September 2nd has been deferred until further notice. So the NSE is going back to the drawing board to work out this release calendar for regulatory announcements and filings by listed companies on the stock exchange. We need to just let you have that. We'll take a break. Is this from Paris with love? Well, the U.S. President Emmanuel Macron says there is no going back. In other words, the Brexit has reached a point of no return. That's what he told the Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday. So how did it all end up with this Brexit conversation as we count down to October the 31st? Let's check in with Juliana Olayinka, my colleague in our London studios there to give us an update. Juliana, this doesn't look like a love party from Paris, France, known for romance and love.
Hi, good morning, Bosun. Well, it depends, to be honest. How you decide to conclude on Boris Johnson's first overseas trip as Prime Minister is dependent upon one thing, and that's really what side of the Brexit fence you sit on. Today, if you're a Brexiteer, you would think that he actually had a really decent trip. On Wednesday, he was in Berlin with Angela Merkel, and for the first time, the EU seemed to move the goalpost and say, actually, you know, we could potentially reopen negotiations if we can indeed find a solution to that Irish backstop. Yesterday, he was with Macron. A lot of people said he would be very firm with Boris Johnson, and he didn't really seem to be that firm. Yes, he did say that the border was indispensable, but he agreed with Merkel and said, look, you know, if you and your government can come up with a solution within 30 days, then yes, we can reopen these negotiations. On the other hand, if you're a Remainer, you'll see it completely opposite. Of course, we know that this withdrawal negotiation has been going on for about 3 years, and the fact that Germany and France have given Boris Johnson and Britain 30 days to come up with a solution almost seems to be impossible. Again, of course, the EU chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, he met with the EU Commission chief, Donald Tusk, yesterday, and both of them reiterated that at the moment, as it stands, it seems as if Britain is heading for a no deal. And of course, if there is a no deal, that's up to and down to Britain and not the EU. So mixed reactions, I would say, in Britain.
Interesting. But let's chew over to about one corporate news. The CMA is running after RBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland, and Santander. Why are these two banks in trouble in any form?
Well, they are in trouble, Bosun. And if you're in the UK, you would have definitely had one sort of call from PPI, which is the Payment Protection Insurance. They're wrapping up their 8-year investigation, which was Britain's biggest banking scandal. It cost the industry over £36 billion. Why? Because a lot of the banks, when they were selling mortgage and any loan, they were also selling this payment protection insurance, which what the investigators found out was something that customers could never claim on. So over the years, these banks have had to keep on reminding customers that they were able to get compensation, and many people across the UK have been compensated. But the Competition and Markets Authority have flagged up that RBS and Santander last year didn't play by the rules. 11,000 people from RBS failed to be reminded that they were still able to claim this compensation, and Santander have been accused of giving misinformation to some of their customers that are still to be claiming. So it's a big scandal, and it was very, very serious in the UK. So they've asked and they've issued and they've warned these two banks that they must comply before next week, when this PPI scandal is supposed to be put to bed.
They are in very big trouble. Very big trouble. Thank you for bringing us up to speed. Juliana Olayinka, thank you so much. Your day is not over yet. See you in the afternoon with Chimezie Obiwagu, bringing us up to speed on the UK markets and other top stories. Okay, so let's wrap up the week at the fixed income market. Let's talk to Chama Udu, who is fixed income dealer at GT Bank. Of course, you saw earlier what the secondary trading has been a very active week. The trading had been very active at the secondary window, but this week was one of the most disappointing Naira bond auction by the Debt Management Office. 150 billion on offer, but that offer went underwater. Chairman, good morning.
Good morning, Boston.
Great. It's good to have you here. How's the week been so far on our fixed income street?
This week, it's been more of a bearish bias because of the illiquidity we have in the money markets. The system is currently short about 200 billion. Like you said, the bond auction this week, only 15 billion was taken up out of the 145 billion offered by the DMO. We've seen mixed sentiment of the fixed income space going to the short end of the curve, the T-bills curve. We've seen more of a bearish bias where we've seen a lot of rediscounting to be able to generate liquidity.
Okay, so in a sense, what's the yield curve like for the week as we're wrapping it up today? Give us a sense of what's the average here for treasuries and for Naira papers.
Okay, for treasury bills at the short end of the curve, we're trading at an average of 13.5, 14, and then for the long end of the curve, the bonds we're at 14.5.
Okay, let's leave it there for today. Chairman Audu, thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend, and I'm sure next week we'll all be wrapping up the month of August and stepping into the month of September. I'm sure we'll touch base with you sometime next week to bring us up to speed what September will most likely bring on fixed income market. Thank you so much. From FMDQ Exchange Place, Chairman Audu, a fixed income dealer at GT Bank. So is Buhari's cabinet announcement rally holding up the stock market? We've seen 2 days of very decent gains, about 2.1% so far. Temple Ashaji is checking in that with us right now as we wrap up the show today and for the week. Tempo, getting here for the last 60 seconds, 120 seconds of the show, where the market is from the NSE trading floor.
It's up. It's up. The market is in green again. I mean, although it's a bit marginal at this point, 0.02%. But before now, it's been way higher than that. And of course, we're seeing interest across so many stocks in the market, given the low prices. We've seen bargain hunting across some major counters. We've seen also the fact that some investors have actually taken position before now. They've seen the profits, glaring at them, but they didn't actually take the profits, meaning that they are actually waiting for some more, appreciation on the price. And so that tells you that investors are really bullish, temporarily bullish, I should say, on the cabinets, basically just hoping on these cabinets, waiting for what they will do, what they will say before they now start taking profit. But we won't rule out the fact that there's still bargain hunting across some major counters in the market. This morning, again, we got UBA's reporting its approval, the approval of its board for the H1 2019 numbers. That's posted on the website of the stock exchange. As we speak, the share price is up to 6 naira 10 kobo, rising by 1.67%. They're basically just waiting for the central bank to give a nod to their numbers that has been submitted to the regulator.
So the UBA notice, which you're talking about, is what I'm looking at right now. Just a two-paragraph statement saying that investors should kindly be advised that the Nigerian Stock Exchange will be immediately notified upon receipt of the central bank approval of the 2019 first half reports and interim dividend. So this most likely will be coming through next month. We're almost done, unless everything between the central bank and the stock exchange, everything gets sorted out between Monday and Friday next week. Of course, by Friday next week, we're already in September.
Absolutely, bossing.
Yes, so that's it. That's what it's going to look like.
Correct, that's the expectation.
Okay, so sniff around the marketplace, Tempo. Let's have an idea of how much interim dividend UBA will be paying. GT Bank came in with 30 kobo. Zenith Bank also came in with 30 kobo.
Oh, yes. So the expectation from UBA and Access Bank and, of course, Stanbic IBTC, which is one of the key stocks investors are putting a bet on at this point is really high as well. These are banks that are historically have been declaring dividends in the market. They do hope that they won't miss this point. I mean, that they're really watching the space right now. So we're seeing a whole lot of interest in them, but it's hard to say what these folks will come on board with. But if you look at GTBank and Zenith Bank, what they declared actually is not too different from what they declared year on year if you do the comparison, Bosun.
Yes, I'm sure with UBA and Stanbic, I'm sure perhaps one of the remaining guys will beat the earlier two among the tier one. Let's leave it there. I'm sure investors are counting their chickens before they hatch already. They have an idea the size of the chicken. Let's lay back over the weekend. Temple, it's been great having you on the show. If possible, have some chicken soup over the weekend, and then we'll get back to it. But before that, you got afternoon show, 1:30, with Chibeze as well to wrap up with. Don't go having any chicken soup yet until later in the day.
It's Friday.
Great.
It's Friday, Wilson.
Friday. Yeah, it's a good Friday. That's what it's looking at. Thank you so much, Temple. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This is your Business Morning. We're wrapping up today's show. See you again on Monday, bright and early. Have a great weekend, and goodbye from Lagos.